And they post-date the original use of the cave, as I mentioned before, from the Iron Age.
A stunning discovery has sent shockwaves through both the religious and academic worlds. A 2,000-year-old scroll found in Israel, a relic from the time of Jesus Christ, has offered new and astonishing insights into one of history's most enigmatic figures. The scroll, miraculously preserved for centuries in a dry desert cave near the Dead Sea, is not just any ancient text. It is a long-lost manuscript that scholars believe may provide first-hand information about the life of Jesus, challenging much of what has been traditionally accepted. This extraordinary find could rewrite vast portions of early Christian history and the very foundations of the Christian faith, offering a fresh perspective on Jesus' teachings, his followers, and his legacy. Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Discovered during an archaeological dig in the Judean desert, this particular scroll has been hailed as one of the most significant finds of the modern era. While the Dead Sea Scrolls, unearthed in the 1940s, shed light on the Jewish communities that existed during the time of Christ, this newly found scroll stands out for its seemingly direct connection to Jesus himself. The text was written in Aramaic, the language spoken by Jesus and his contemporaries, and initial translations suggest that it could have been authored by someone within his immediate circle, possibly one of his early disciples. As archaeologists and biblical scholars work tirelessly to unravel the scroll's contents, what they have uncovered so far has been nothing short of remarkable. The scroll appears to contain accounts of events in Jesus' life that have been left out of the canonical Gospels. These stories depict a Jesus who is more politically involved than previously thought, engaging with not only religious leaders but also local rulers and Roman officials. The implications of such interactions could challenge the long-held belief that Jesus distanced himself from political movements and solely preached about the kingdom of God. One of the more striking sections of the scroll seems to suggest that Jesus had a different approach to certain key issues than the New Testament portrays. Early fragments indicate a greater emphasis on social reform, particularly regarding the economic inequalities that plagued the Jewish people under Roman occupation. Rather than solely focusing on spiritual salvation, the Jesus depicted in this text appears deeply concerned with material justice, speaking passionately about wealth distribution and the responsibility of the rich toward the poor. If this interpretation holds, it could radically shift the perception of Jesus as a spiritual leader to one who was also a social revolutionary, dedicated to challenging the socio-economic status quo of his time. Equally intriguing is the evidence that the scroll may provide regarding Jesus' relationship with other religious movements of his era. While the New Testament portrays tensions between Jesus and certain Jewish sects, this newly discovered text suggests a more complex relationship. In fact, the scroll mentions previously unknown meetings between Jesus and groups such as the Essenes and Pharisees, indicating that there may have been a degree of mutual respect and even collaboration rather than outright hostility. This new information could force a re-examination of the religious dynamics of first-century Judea and the role Jesus played within them. Another tantalizing aspect of the scroll is its potential to shed light on the so-called lost years of Jesus' life, the period between his childhood and the beginning of his ministry, about which the New Testament says very little. Preliminary analysis hints that the scroll contains references to travels Jesus may have undertaken during this time, possibly venturing beyond Judea and Galilee to regions like Egypt and Syria. These journeys, if confirmed, could reveal a more cosmopolitan Jesus, one who was exposed to different cultures and philosophies, which may have influenced his later teachings. Such revelations could provide an entirely new understanding of how Jesus' experiences shaped his message. Furthermore, the scroll offers new perspectives on the nature of Jesus' miracles, which have long been a source of debate among scholars and theologians. Rather than simply being supernatural events, as described in the Gospels, the scroll suggests that some of Jesus' miracles may have been symbolic acts intended to convey deeper spiritual truths. For example, the feeding of the 5,000 might have been a staged demonstration to illustrate the importance of community and sharing rather than a literal multiplication of food. This interpretation does not necessarily deny the possibility of miracles, but instead invites readers to consider them in a broader, more metaphorical context. The discovery of this scroll also raises profound questions about the early Christian movement. The text seems to imply that the teachings of Jesus were more diverse than what has been passed down through the New Testament. There are hints of disagreements and debates among his followers about the interpretation of his message, suggesting that early Christianity was far from a unified movement. Instead, it was a dynamic and evolving collection of ideas and practices, with different groups emphasizing different aspects of Jesus' teachings. This revelation could force historians to rethink the origins of Christianity and the ways in which it developed after Jesus' death. The implications of this discovery reach beyond the academic and theological realms. For millions of Christians around the world, Jesus is not just a historical figure, but the central figure of their faith. Any new information about his life and teachings, particularly if it contradicts or expands upon what is found in the Bible, could have a profound impact on how Christians understand their beliefs. Some may welcome these new insights as an opportunity to deepen their faith, while others may find them challenging or even unsettling. Either way, the scroll has the potential to spark widespread discussion and debate, both within religious communities and in the broader public sphere. The scroll also has the potential to bridge some of the long-standing divides between Christianity and other religious traditions, particularly Judaism. By providing a more nuanced picture of Jesus' interactions with Jewish groups of his time, the scroll could help to challenge some of the historical misunderstandings and stereotypes that have contributed to centuries of tension between Christians and Jews. If Jesus is shown to have engaged more positively with Jewish sects, it could pave the way for greater interfaith dialogue and understanding, offering a more inclusive vision of his role within the broader religious landscape of the ancient world. Of course, the discovery of this scroll is not without controversy. Even as scholars and archaeologists work to authenticate and translate the text, there are those who are already questioning its validity. Some conservative religious groups have expressed skepticism, arguing that the scroll could be a forgery or that its contents might have been misinterpreted. Others worry that the findings could be used to undermine traditional Christian beliefs or to promote alternative religious agendas. These debates are likely to intensify as more information about the scroll comes to light and as its implications are more fully understood. Despite these challenges, there is no denying the excitement and intrigue surrounding the discovery of the scroll. For historians, theologians, and archaeologists alike, it represents an unprecedented opportunity to gain new insights into one of the most important periods in human history. The fact that such a significant artifact has survived for 2 millennia, hidden away in the arid desert, is itself a testament to the enduring power of Jesus' legacy. As researchers continue to study the scroll, it is likely that even more revelations will emerge, further deepening our understanding of the historical Jesus and the world in which he lived. In the meantime, the discovery of the scroll serves as a powerful reminder of the complexity and richness of the ancient world. It offers a window into a time when religious, political, and social forces were all intertwined, shaping the lives of individuals and communities in profound ways. Jesus was at the heart of this world, navigating its challenges and inspiring a movement that would go on to transform the course of history. The scroll provides new details about how he may have done this, offering fresh perspectives on his motivations, his message, and his methods. As more details from the scroll are translated and made public, there will no doubt be continued debate about its meaning and significance. Some of the information it contains may confirm long-held beliefs, while other aspects may force scholars and believers to rethink what they know about Jesus and his time. Yet regardless of where these discussions lead, the discovery of the scroll is a remarkable event in its own right. It opens up new avenues of inquiry and invites us to consider the past in new and unexpected ways, reminding us that history is not always as clear-cut as it seems. The discovery of the 2,000-year-old scroll found in Israel has the potential to be one of the most groundbreaking archaeological finds of the century, and the new insights it offers into the life and times of Jesus Christ seem only to deepen as scholars delve further into its contents. As researchers painstakingly translate the fragile text, they are uncovering an even more complex and multifaceted portrait of Jesus than previously imagined. What is emerging from this ancient manuscript is not just an expansion of the Jesus we know from the Bible, but a figure with new dimensions, one who interacted with his surroundings in ways that scholars had not anticipated. One of the most fascinating aspects of the scroll is the way it appears to document the role Jesus played in a broader network of socio-political movements that were thriving in Judea during his time. Previous historical records often depict Jesus as a relatively solitary figure whose primary mission was spiritual. However, the scroll provides evidence suggesting that Jesus was not an isolated preacher, but rather part of a larger, more organized effort to address the socio-political challenges facing the Jewish people under Roman rule. It seems that Jesus may have been far more involved in advocating for the rights and well-being of the marginalized than the canonical Gospels suggest. This newfound understanding positions Jesus not just as a religious teacher, but as a radical reformer who recognized the interconnectedness of spiritual and material life. According to portions of the scroll, Jesus may have been in active dialogue with other revolutionary movements of the time. It hints at his awareness of and participation in various forms of protest against the oppressive Roman occupation. The Jesus of this scroll is not just concerned with individual salvation or spiritual enlightenment. He is deeply engaged in advocating for the liberation of his people from both spiritual and political bondage. This connection to revolutionary movements also suggests that Jesus may have been more involved with the Zealots, an anti-Roman Jewish sect that promoted rebellion against the empire, than previously believed. The traditional view of Jesus emphasizes his message of peace, but this scroll suggests a far more complicated figure, one who balanced the call for peaceful coexistence with a more urgent demand for justice in the face of oppression. There are even indications that Jesus was in close contact with leaders of other revolutionary factions, which would explain some of the conflicts that arose between his movement and Roman authorities. This deeper political engagement casts new light on many aspects of Jesus' ministry, particularly his trial and crucifixion. The new scroll suggests that Jesus' arrest and execution may have been not solely because of his religious teachings, but also due to his growing influence as a leader who threatened the Roman political establishment. While the New Testament portrays Jesus' trial as primarily a religious event, this document paints a picture of a man who was seen as a significant political threat. If true, this interpretation would underscore the precariousness of Jesus' position in Roman-occupied Judea and how his growing popularity among both the religiously devout and the politically discontented eventually made him a target for the authorities. The scroll also sheds light on the organizational structure of Jesus' movement, revealing previously unknown details about his followers. While the New Testament focuses on the 12 apostles, this newly discovered text hints at a far more complex network of disciples, some of whom held significant roles within the broader framework of the early Jesus movement. It suggests that the movement may have had regional leaders who coordinated efforts across different parts of Judea and Galilee, organizing gatherings, protests, and discussions that went beyond spiritual teaching. This expanded network could explain how the message of Jesus spread so rapidly after his death, and why it resonated with such a diverse group of people, from fishermen to tax collectors and revolutionaries. Moreover, the scroll reveals that Jesus may have relied heavily on women in his ministry, more so than the traditionally accepted Gospels acknowledge. While the New Testament includes references to women such as Mary Magdalene, this new document appears to suggest that women held key leadership roles within his circle. Certain sections of the scroll highlight the significant influence that women had, not only in providing financial and logistical support, but also in shaping theological discussions and strategies for outreach. This new understanding of the role of women in Jesus' ministry could challenge long-held patriarchal interpretations of early Christianity, inviting scholars and religious communities to re-examine the contributions of women to the formation of the faith. In addition to new insights into Jesus' followers and political involvement, the scroll also offers a fresh perspective on his relationship with the Roman authorities and the Jewish priesthood. Traditionally, the New Testament emphasizes the antagonism between Jesus and the Jewish leaders, particularly the Pharisees and Sadducees. However, this newly discovered text suggests that Jesus may have had more nuanced and cooperative relationships with some of these groups than previously thought. The scroll details dialogues between Jesus and members of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council, that indicate a mutual respect, even if they disagreed on key theological points. This casts doubt on the idea that Jesus was universally rejected by Jewish religious authorities and opens up the possibility that some members of the priesthood might have been sympathetic to his message, or at least saw in him a valuable ally in their own struggles against Roman domination. This more cooperative view of Jesus' relationships with Jewish leaders also adds complexity to his ultimate betrayal and arrest. It is possible that his betrayal by Judas, as recorded in the Gospels, was part of a larger political scheme, perhaps orchestrated by factions within the Jewish leadership who feared the ramifications of Roman retribution if Jesus' popularity continued to grow. The scroll hints at political maneuvering within both the Roman and Jewish leadership circles, suggesting that Jesus' fate was sealed not just because of his spiritual message, but because he represented a convergence of religious and political threats. Furthermore, the scroll seems to offer glimpses into Jesus' inner thoughts and private moments, providing an unprecedented look at his personal struggles. While the New Testament portrays Jesus as unwavering in his faith and purpose, the scroll indicates moments of doubt and reflection, where Jesus wrestled with the magnitude of his mission. These passages are reminiscent of his agony in the Garden of Gethsemane, but they occur earlier in his ministry, showing a man who was profoundly aware of the danger he faced and the difficult choices he had to make. Such revelations could add a more human dimension to Jesus, showing him not only as a divine figure, but also as a deeply human one who grappled with fear, uncertainty, and the weight of his responsibilities. One of the most shocking aspects of the scroll's content is the suggestion that Jesus' relationship with John the Baptist was even more intricate than the Gospels describe. While the New Testament portrays John as a precursor to Jesus, announcing the arrival of the Messiah, this new text suggests that John may have played a more direct role in shaping Jesus' ministry. The scroll contains fragments that describe secret meetings between Jesus and John, where the two discuss strategies for their respective missions and even plan joint actions to challenge both the religious and political establishments. This deeper connection between the two figures could lead to new interpretations of John's role in the early Christian movement, and may suggest that Jesus' ministry was, at least initially, more of a collaborative effort than a solitary mission. Even more startling is the scroll's mention of a possible conflict between Jesus and John the Baptist's followers after John's execution. The text implies that after John's death, some of his disciples were hesitant to follow Jesus, and there may have been tensions between the two groups over leadership and direction. This rivalry would complicate the traditionally harmonious image of the early Christian movement and suggest that, like many emerging movements, it faced internal divisions and power struggles. These details open up new avenues of research into the early Christian community, potentially reshaping our understanding of how the movement evolved after the death of its two primary figures. In addition to these revelations, the scroll also delves into the metaphysical aspects of Jesus' teachings in ways that have surprised scholars. While the New Testament focuses on Jesus' parables and sermons about love, forgiveness, and the kingdom of God, this text reveals a Jesus who was also deeply engaged with mystical traditions that were prevalent in the region at the time. There are references to esoteric knowledge, divine visions, and even possible mentions of practices similar to meditation, suggesting that Jesus may have drawn from a broader spiritual tradition that included elements of Jewish mysticism. This raises the intriguing possibility that Jesus' teachings were influenced by other religious traditions, such as the mystical schools of thought that existed in Egypt and Persia, which would provide a new context for understanding his message about the nature of the divine. The scroll also touches on the idea of reincarnation, a concept not traditionally associated with Christianity. Some passages seem to suggest that Jesus may have spoken of the soul's journey through multiple lifetimes, an idea more commonly found in Eastern religions. If this interpretation is accurate, it could radically alter how Jesus' teachings are understood in relation to concepts of the afterlife and salvation. It could also challenge the traditional Christian understanding of resurrection, suggesting that Jesus' resurrection was not a one-time event, but part of a broader spiritual process that applied to all people. These revelations could have profound theological implications, prompting a rethinking of key Christian doctrines and their relationship to other religious traditions. Beyond the theological implications, the scroll also offers practical insights into the daily life of Jesus and his followers. It describes the kinds of food they ate, the clothes they wore, and the places they stayed as they traveled from town to town. These details provide a richer, more textured picture of Jesus' ministry, showing him as a man who lived a simple, humble life in close connection with the common people. The scroll even contains descriptions of the types of homes and synagogues where Jesus preached, giving archaeologists valuable clues about the physical environments in which he operated. These mundane details bring Jesus and his world to life in ways that the more abstract accounts in the New Testament do not, allowing modern readers to imagine more vividly what it would have been like to follow him during his lifetime. One such miracle described in the scroll involved a healing that took place in the outskirts of Galilee. Unlike the more dramatic miracles where Jesus healed blindness or leprosy, this act was focused on the restoration of mental health. The scroll recounts how Jesus encountered a man who had been driven mad, isolated from society, and tormented by what we might now understand as severe psychological distress. Rather than performing a quick healing through a word or touch, Jesus spent days with the man, engaging in a form of what could be seen as early therapeutic conversation and prayer. Over time, the man's mind was restored, his torment lifted, and he was reintegrated into his community. This depiction of Jesus as a healer of both body and mind highlights his deep compassion and his willingness to invest time in the most marginalized members of society. What makes this miracle even more significant is the implication that Jesus did not always rely solely on supernatural means to heal. Instead, he appears to have utilized methods that involved listening, empathizing, and offering spiritual guidance over time. This contrasts with the instantaneous nature of many of the healing miracles recorded in the New Testament and suggests that Jesus' healing ministry may have been more varied and complex than previously thought. It also points to an understanding of mental illness and emotional suffering in the ancient world that is rarely discussed in traditional religious texts, offering a glimpse into how Jesus may have addressed the full spectrum of human suffering, both physical and psychological. In another section of the scroll, there is a detailed account of a mysterious event that took place on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. According to the text, Jesus and his disciples were gathering with local fishermen when a powerful storm suddenly erupted, threatening to capsize their boats. Unlike the well-known episode in the Gospels where Jesus calms the storm with a command, this scroll describes an event in which Jesus appeared to manipulate the elements in a different way. Rather than stopping the storm, Jesus is said to have walked into the raging waters and allowed the storm to continue around him, creating a protective circle of calm where his disciples stood. The storm raged on just beyond this perimeter, but within this sacred space, they were safe, unaffected by the chaos outside. The event was seen as both a demonstration of Jesus' control over nature and a profound metaphor for the protection his presence offered to those who followed him. The symbolic meaning of this miracle has not gone unnoticed by scholars. While it is clearly a display of supernatural power, it also suggests that Jesus was using natural elements to teach deeper spiritual lessons. The idea that one can find peace and safety within chaos, so long as they remain close to the divine, is a theme that resonates strongly with the broader message of his ministry. This miracle, more than simply being a demonstration of divine intervention, appears to reflect Jesus' philosophy of enduring hardship with faith and trust. It is a lesson that speaks not just to his immediate disciples, but also to future generations who would face persecution and suffering. Another section of the scroll introduces the idea that Jesus' miracles might have been viewed through different cultural lenses by those who witnessed them. One particularly striking passage describes a healing Jesus performed on a Gentile woman who approached him, desperate to cure her ailing son. The text describes how the woman, who was unfamiliar with Jewish customs, interpreted Jesus' healing powers in terms of her own cultural and religious framework. Rather than seeing Jesus as the Messiah, she perceived him as a kind of mystical healer, akin to figures found in her own tradition. This demonstrates how Jesus' miracles may have been understood differently by people of various backgrounds, reflecting the universality of his appeal while also complicating the notion of a uniform interpretation of his actions. The scroll's detailed accounts of Jesus' interactions with Gentiles are another revelation that forces a reevaluation of his mission. Traditionally, Jesus' ministry is understood to have been primarily focused on the Jewish people, with later apostles such as Paul expanding the message to Gentile audiences. However, the scroll suggests that Jesus himself may have been more proactive in reaching out to non-Jewish communities than the New Testament lets on. Several instances are recorded in which Jesus travels to predominantly Gentile regions, engaging with people from different religious backgrounds and even participating in dialogues about their beliefs. This casts Jesus not just as a Jewish messianic figure, but as a more cosmopolitan teacher who sought to bridge cultural and religious divides. One of the most provocative sections of the scroll describes what appears to be an early version of what would later become known as the Sermon on the Mount. However, the contents of this sermon differ significantly from the version recorded in the Gospel of Matthew. In this earlier form, Jesus' teachings seem to emphasize a more radical form of social justice than is present in the canonical Gospels. There are extensive passages that discuss the redistribution of wealth, the condemnation of systemic oppression, and a call for his followers to actively engage in changing societal structures. Rather than focusing solely on spiritual poverty, this version of the sermon seems to be a direct challenge to the economic and political systems that kept so many people in poverty. This radical vision of Jesus as a social reformer is one of the most surprising aspects of the scroll, as it suggests that his early teachings may have been more overtly political than what was later recorded in the New Testament. The implications of this discovery are far-reaching, as it challenges the long-held view of Jesus as primarily a spiritual leader concerned with individual salvation. Instead, this text portrays him as someone deeply engaged with the political realities of his time, actively calling for structural change and encouraging his followers to be agents of justice in the world. This could explain why Jesus' movement was seen as such a threat by both Roman and Jewish authorities, as his teachings were not just about personal morality, but about the transformation of society. In addition to these political elements, the scroll also reveals a more esoteric side of Jesus' teachings, one that may have been deliberately downplayed or misunderstood by later Christian writers. Some passages suggest that Jesus spoke in greater detail about the nature of the divine and humanity's connection to it, exploring themes of unity, oneness, and the interconnectedness of all life. These teachings bear a striking resemblance to certain mystical traditions, such as Kabbalah or Gnosticism, and suggest that Jesus may have been more influenced by these esoteric ideas than is typically acknowledged in mainstream Christian thought. One particularly intriguing section describes a vision that Jesus shared with his closest disciples, where he spoke of the cosmos as a great body, with each part connected to the whole. In this vision, he explained that every living being is a reflection of the divine, and that to harm another is to harm oneself. This profound teaching on the interconnectedness of all life has significant implications for how we understand Jesus' ethical teachings, especially in relation to concepts like nonviolence, compassion, and forgiveness. It also suggests that Jesus may have been offering a much more holistic vision of spirituality, one that encompassed not just the salvation of individual souls, but the healing of the entire world. The scroll also provides fascinating new insights into Jesus' relationship with his family, particularly his mother, Mary. While the New Testament gives relatively little information about Mary's role after Jesus' birth, this newly discovered text portrays her as a central figure in his ministry, offering counsel and support. In one particularly poignant passage, Mary is described as intervening in a dispute among the disciples, offering wisdom and guidance that helps to resolve the conflict. This suggests that Mary may have played a much more active and influential role in Jesus' life and ministry than previously believed. In addition to Mary's influence, the scroll also mentions Jesus' siblings, who are almost entirely absent from the New Testament narrative. The text suggests that Jesus' brothers and sisters were involved in his ministry to varying degrees, with some supporting his mission and others expressing skepticism. One particularly detailed account describes a heated argument between Jesus and one of his brothers, who questioned the wisdom of confronting the Roman authorities so directly. This family dynamic adds a new layer of complexity to Jesus' life, showing him not only as a spiritual leader, but as a son and brother navigating the challenges of familial relationships. Another surprising element of the scroll is its mention of other early messianic figures who were active around the same time as Jesus. The text provides a fascinating account of a meeting between Jesus and another preacher who was also claiming to be the Messiah. Rather than dismissing this rival, Jesus is said to have engaged in a respectful dialogue, discussing their shared goals and the differences in their approaches. This interaction suggests that Jesus was aware of the broader messianic expectations of his time and was willing to engage with others who claimed to be fulfilling similar roles. This could offer new insights into the religious landscape of first-century Judea, where multiple movements and figures were vying for influence. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what do you think the scroll will reveal about Jesus? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.